what's important for us at TPY is really to partner with founders who are radically open-minded. Like you sense that at the very first moment someone steps through the door or gets in front of you on Zoom, whether the person is a radical open-minded person or someone that comes with a very well thought, well-established theory of what needs to happen when and how.
Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Just sit back, relax, and learn from the leaders of today. It's a journey. Each one is different, unique, inspiring. Let's get started. This episode is powered by J Ventures, a community-driven VC fund in Silicon Valley, in partnership with UniPaaS, and sponsored by Homeward Ventures, Hippo Insurance, Upwest, Hillel at Stanford, Leap, and Birthright Excel. Welcome to another episode of 20-Minute Leaders. I am joined today by Dekel Persi, a founding partner at TPY Capital, an early-stage venture capital fund with over $135 million under management. TPY Capital partners with both serial and first-time entrepreneurs seeking partners who share similar values and hands-on support. TPY Capital invested in more than 20 companies, including AI21, UniPaaS, H2 Pro, Qedma, Pasqal, Paramount Data, TabNine, Signals, Seebo, and Enzymotec. Dekel Persi, welcome to 20-Minute Leaders, TPY. How are you doing?
Thank you very much. Happy to be here. I'm doing very well.
I'm honored to have you here. There's so many things that I want to talk about your journey, from your upbringing in Iran to hedge funds to private equity to CFO of a family office, and then most recently now founding partner of TPY. So many different things around the financial world within TPY, quantum computing and fintech. I don't even know where to begin. So Dekel, take me back to Iran. Take me back a little bit about your upbringing. How does one get to grow up to be so successful in so many different financial institutions in the tech world now?
Yeah, so I was born in Jerusalem and found myself actually when I was 6 years old as a child in the biggest expat community of back then outside of Israel. That was Tehran. There were 20,000 Israelis at that time. Some of them were actually involved in building the Iranian civil nuclear program. It was an Israeli venture. And I went to an Israeli school in Tehran.
Israeli school in Tehran.
Israeli school in Tehran, yeah. I do, even today, I get to meet like people which I've never known, of their existence. And they say, what, Tehran? Yeah, we went to the same school. So it happened to me last week, actually, from someone who's based out of LA. And then back to Israel, and like many veterans of the Iranian expat community, through my father, spent some time in Africa. Many Israelis moved to that was the Silicon Valley of the 80s. Back to Israel, military service with a stint in the Caribbean in between. Joined the military. And actually, during my military service, that was the first time I got exposure into the world of investing and decision making. So I was crunching numbers on an AS400 back then, 1991.
What's an
to help
AS400?
military leaders.
Know.
Yeah, it's a computer, and it's actually still some organizations are still using it.
Okay.
So I was, crunching numbers to help the leaders make better decisions around, R&D, or are we buying, more planes or more tanks, or like what's the trade-off versus certain scenarios. So that was my first kind of glimpse into the world of risk management. And when I left the military, I joined what was then the nascent Israeli high-tech software company. I joined a company who was, I think, one of the first IPOs ever at NASDAQ. That was in 1996. The company was selling ERP systems for hospitals. And the first client was Tel HaShomer Hospital. Yeah, so that, and then I moved from to the other side, to the investment side, and I joined a fund. But back then, the term VC was not even coined. That was an investment house, and we did, like many other funds, everything from investing in kibbutzim-owned plastic and metal companies, all the way through new high-tech companies. So we had a portfolio of about 25 investments. Some of the names you may know, like Tami Arba, the famous Israeli, that was my first investment. Great investment, by the way, exited to Strauss. All the way through medical device, one of the first Israeli medical device company called Versamed, which was acquired by GE. And then came, the dot-com bubble. And the first intifada, or the second, I lost count. And and the dot-com bubble. So and the 9/11. Wow. So I figured that's a great timing to take a break and do my MBA. So I moved to Europe for a 1-year MBA program. I left with a backpack, and I got back to Israel 12 years later. Wow. With 2 full load containers, a wife, and 3 kids. So that was the 1-year MBA.
Amazing. So you're in Europe, and tell me a little bit, what I'm hearing a common thread here is this idea of being able to identify interesting opportunities, both for yourself, in terms of timing, but also in terms of understanding where the market is shifting and where you can continue your own personal learning curve to continue understanding the financial world better. We ended now after in Europe, and you're part of a family office. Tell me more about this part of the journey, and then I want to get to TPY.
Yeah, so I finished my MBA. I wanted to stay in Europe. It was a difficult time in the job market, so I figured, hey, I'm going to stay with the fund I was with back then. I'm going to help some of the portfolio companies do business in the European Union,
right?
And that led me to almost a random meeting with what later became my anchor LP, or my founding investment partner. Started as discussions around where the world is going and investments and so on. And after a few months of conversations, I found myself as a full-time employee of that family business, based out of Belgium, Luxembourg, Paris. Exciting environment to work with, and I had exposure to many different industries, from luxury to diamonds to manufacturing to alternative assets, spending time, from India to Japan, Singapore, traveling, great time.
Amazing.
Before you realize, suddenly you have a family and kids, and then you start to think, okay, what identity I want my kids to grow up to, and it was clear to me that I want them to be Israelis. Okay, and when my daughter started to respond to me in Netherlands and in French, I said, okay, stop, going back to Israel, and it was obvious I want to do something in the investment sector. Managed to convince my employer to back me up, with a search fund, who later evolved into a single LP fund, who later evolved into a multi-LP fund, which is the current format of TPY.
What was it like coming back 23 years later to a nation that is
12 years later
to a nation that is it's still very, very different. 12 years is a long time.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't absent for 12 years, because I used to come at least 4 times a year, which was a fantastic experience to come back to my home country as a tourist. It's an amazing opportunity. But yeah, you realize that I've been sleeping in Europe, in dormant Europe, while Israel has been moving at the speed of light. So
wow.
It was great, to be back. It's also a sense of closing a loop on some personal ambitions, to live outside of Israel. I've done that, been there. I don't want to move anymore. That's my home. That's my place, and that's where I'm going to
Well,
stay for the rest of my life.
leading to you now helping run a leading Israeli venture capital fund for early stage companies, both pre-revenue and revenue stage, TPY. Within there, you're looking at quantum computing and fintech. And one of the things that we'll talk about in a second, it's this idea of relationship building with founders and the way that the fund is working. But before we get to that, you've spent so many years doing all sorts of investments. When I'm growing up to this world of investments, really the only thing that I know is venture capital and the way that it's working. And it's hard for me to even imagine a different way of working. What is it like for you now balancing, the mindset of venture capital, but you're used to, I guess, different speeds, different types of companies, right?
Right. So, I think what's true for entrepreneurs and also for investors, and actually it's almost a scientific fact. You have to adapt. Like if you want to survive, you have to adapt. The circumstances, you have to adapt to change of speeds and change of landscape. And I think that was, like part of my upbringing, to be one day in Africa, hot, and then, a few months later in Switzerland, and like the shift from, hot and stinking to white and beautiful, and you have to to adapt yourself to the environment. I mean, that's part of my DNA, and that's what I'm trying to bring into everything that I do. Like, move on. If things don't, look good, if the environmental change, there's a new competitor, there's a new technology that is, underpinning your plans. Just, read the reality, deal with it, and move on.
I love it. Okay, TPY. Tell me about TPY.
Right. So, say that again.
Tell me about TPY.
So yeah, TPY. So I started TPY with my partner, my beloved partner, Guy. That was back in 2011. So as I mentioned, it started as a search fund, evolved into a single LP investment arm, and then evolved into a multi LP fund, which is the current fund. We started really, with an open-minded attitude, like where are the opportunities, and in the first fund we kind of sampled or tasted several verticals, all the way from food tech. That was one of our most successful investments in a company called Enzymotec, which I'm very proud of. Actually, one of the best Israeli companies founded by an Israeli Arab, which connects to another theme of our fund, which is diversity. All the way through ad tech and data and analytics, and that was kind of was setting the stage for our current fund TPY2, where we decided to focus on certain verticals. So we are a vertical agnostic fund, but we do have our preferences. One of them is, as you mentioned, quantum computing, which I found a fascinating subject, all the way to cloud infrastructure, data and analytics, and a bucket which we call human augmentation. So everything that helps humans do things better, faster.
Incredible. So obviously you're bringing with you a wealth of experience from the financial sectors, looking at different markets, understanding the world, being adaptive, being empathic to all sorts of different people and societies and colleagues around the world. When you're looking at now at the Israeli ecosystem and you're coming in with TPY Fund 1 and now Fund 2, how are you strategically thinking about this in your day-to-day? Because you've done a lot of the financial side. Now there's a lot of also work with the actual entrepreneurs besides just the investment, right?
Right. Well, I think the best is yet to come for Israel as a nation, and for the Israeli high tech sector. Like I've seen the sector growing from a very small software companies, where a $40 million exit was considered an amazing, and a $10 million IPO proceeds at Nasdaq was an amazing success. And now we're in a totally different stage of scale, but there's a lot to do in other verticals. Like Israel today the high-tech sector is probably 80% is focused around cyber and fintech. There's a lot to do in life sciences, in other areas, and that depends, primarily on the nation's ability to produce more engineers and talent. So that's kind of 20,000 feet overview of where we're heading. I think also that the fact that we're in a nation that is constantly under stressors, exogenic stressors. Again, I often take analogies from nature because I love observing nature. A muscle or a bone gets stronger as a response to stress, and that's also true for societies. Not that I'm wishing our nation to eternally face the troubles that we have, but I think the part of the culture and the fact that we have to to go through cycles of existential threats every once in a while is a unique recipe for
Right.
the
It's an
Israeli
interesting
innovation.
dissonance and balance to think through those existential crises and these cycles as actually motivators and catalysts for what we're seeing with the economy going. And I think that's pretty remarkable. When you're sitting down with the entrepreneurs pre or post investment, and you're thinking through the journeys, what is your perception of this? So what is your perception of the relationship that you're building with them, and what is your role in collaborating with them as you go on?
Yeah. So first of all, I know I can offer only my very limited point of view, because I do think every fund manager is going through an adverse selection process where you end up teaming up with like-minded entrepreneurs. And what's important for us at TPY is really to partner with founders who are radically open-minded. Like you sense that at the very first moment someone steps through the door or gets in front of you on Zoom, whether the person is a radical open-minded person or someone that comes with a very well thought, well-established theory of what needs to happen when and how. And what we often say to entrepreneurs is that if you come to us for answers, go look for another partner. Like, I'm not smarter than you are. I can only offer you questions, very good questions, by the way, that's gonna help you challenge your beliefs. That's gonna help you find white spots in your thinking or new opportunities. And
I love it.
that's sort of our attitude towards working with entrepreneurs.
Asking the right questions, and I already mentioned this to you. When I was preparing for this episode, I was looking at your website and I was looking through some of the materials, and it felt very, very welcoming. It felt very different. It felt very much more of a partnership. It didn't feel the traditional venture capital that I think a lot of VCs are going in this direction now, and I think that's pretty exciting from an entrepreneurial perspective. That this is the sort of partnership that we're heading to. Dekel, I really want to thank you for coming and for sharing your story and your time. I have a few last questions back to you, and I want to take you back to your childhood before you're crunching numbers on the computer. I already forgot the name of the computer from the army. What fascinates you as a kid? What really drives you in your day to day?
Yeah, so I think I became a venture capitalist or investor because I couldn't become a scientist. Like, that was my childhood dream. I was fascinated by science, astronomy. I mean, I still find myself on a weekly basis between midnight and 2 a.m. Watching astronomy documentaries and physics documentaries. And so I think this basic curiosity to, like, where we come from, what are we made of, where are we're heading. There was questions that preoccupied me as a kid. Life events, kind of life dynamics led me to a career in finance and investing. But I remain this, frustrated scientist or frustrated engineer. And the second best is, to actually work with scientists and engineers. So I really, really like doing it. And yeah, when thinking of things like quantum computing, and just the idea that things can coexist at the same time, like truth and false can coexist, and it kind of resonates with everything I've been learning to my career. There's no single truth. There's no 0 or 1. 0 and 1 can coexist. Two conflicting beliefs can coexist and be truth at the same time.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, I think that's a perfect segue to the next question about you. What inspires you today?
So yeah, I think when you see the pace of scientific discoveries, the pace of innovation, it preoccupies me. It also concerns me because I think we are, might be innovating ourselves to extinction. That's a topic
You're
for
opening up
another
to another
podcast.
episode right now.
Absolutely. But I, at the same time, I think innovation and progress cannot be stopped. Like there's nothing
right.
in our part to stop it, and that's probably where we're heading. And generally speaking, I think the world we live in today, with all the negative aspects and global warming and wars, it is a better place than what used to be 100 years ago. So I'm a big believer in innovation and progress.
Dekel, toda rabba, and 3 last questions, 3 last words that you would choose for yourself. 3 words you would choose for yourself.
Yeah. Well, first of all, a father. I'm 100% father in my personality and my being.
I can see it.
I'm a curious person, and I'm a long-term thinker, which is maybe another way to say a dreamer.
I love it. Dekel, toda rabba. Your portfolio is incredible.
Michael.
The companies are so interesting, and I really thank you for taking the time, and I look forward to continue building the relationship and picking your brain on some ideas of my own sooner rather than later.
Same here, and looking forward to hosting you in our offices.
Toda rabba. Take care.